Hey kittens, it's Fairly. I went to I don't know what I would call it, a New Age fair this last weekend, and I picked up some really exciting things. Maybe this is just exciting to me, but as a member of the witchy occult community, I feel like it's important to share what you learn and share what your resources are. So today I want to show you all of the books that I got, so kind of like a witchy book haul, I guess. I've never done a haul video before. This feels weird even to me. I was at this fair, and it was super, super small. It's in New Jersey where my parents live. I didn't even get in the door because Opal, no wobble ball. Opal, touch. No, don't bring the ball. Opal, touch. Good girl. You guys are seeing more of my pets. Anyway, I didn't even get in the door of this fair because right outside there was a guy with so many books, and books are my kryptonite. So I was immediately struck by this book, which is probably the newest title in this whole pile of books. H.P. Lovecraft, Master of Horror's influence on modern occultism. So this book is about the kind of give and take relationship between literature and actual occult theory. If you've read H.P. Lovecraft, you will know that he is more or less the originator of the Necronomicon, which has become this fabled thing, like an actual text that people have actually cited and looked for, and, you know, spawned not only a fictional like genre of its own, but also a religion. Oh, what was the name of that church that they founded? Hold on. I definitely didn't make this up. I'm not finding it immediately, but there was definitely like a couple kids back in like the 70s, maybe it was, that created a religion based on the Necronomicon specifically so they didn't have to pay taxes, because they heard that clergy was not taxed, and they founded this religion and like even went as far as to like design like clerical robes, and it's a crazy story, and I swear I have a book about it somewhere, just not anywhere behind me where I can grab it easily. My point is that there is this like weird give and take relationship between actual occult theory and H.P. Lovecraft, from what he borrowed from occult theory to what occult theory borrowed to him. I'm really excited to read this book. It's definitely much more theory. There's really no practical application. This is just purely for my entertainment, which is not much. I don't think you've seen my massive bookshelves behind me because I don't zoom out that far, but most of the books I have are for research, and I'm constantly researching and growing and learning so that I can serve people the best that I can. So this is a purely entertaining book, but I'm really excited about it. This is the first thing I saw in his bucket and was like, I need this. Okay, so then I found this, The Advanced Guide to Enochian Magic. Enochian magic is a very old form of like ceremonial magic. I'm scanning here to see if there's any like more concise way of explaining this, because I would just get rambly and tell you about how many different really famous magicians worked in Enochian magic, but this is supposed to be a complete guide, and it goes really deep. I've read a little bit about Enochian magic specifically from Aleister Crowley, so my experience with Enochian magic is not vast. Ceremonial magic was never really my thing, simply because it's really complicated and requires like to the detail follow-up, and I'm a little bit more loose than that. Also, I don't really work necessarily with entities quite as much, and Enochian magic is a form of like entity magic. Again, it's angels. But this is like an old book, and I'm really excited to see what it has inside of it. But yeah, so this was like the second thing I saw and picked up, and this is kind of when I realized that it was gonna be a good day. I then found a book that has been on my wish list for ages, and that would be Donna Cunningham's Healing Pluto Problems. This is definitely more of a prescriptive book, so there are some chart studies in here to give examples of how to interpret Pluto, which is typically a generational planet, but when you look at the aspects and the house placements of Pluto, it does say a lot about someone's relationship with power and control. And it can at times represent things like abuse or tendency towards victimization and things like that. So this is a book that specifically deals with how to read Pluto in a chart and how to make recommendations to rectify that Pluto placement. There's chart studies, which I love because it gives a really clear, like, visual representation of something versus just this like kind of amorphous thing I need to envision for myself. It's thorough. I've read some of her other books on other outer planets. Again, outer planets are generational, so they tend to be read less in a personal chart, but they do speak to our relationships with things in the world around us. So I'm really interested in Pluto. I don't know if you guys could tell from my other videos. I have a Pluto dominance in my chart. It's led me to a whole like path of discovery that I really never thought I would go down. And I'm a big advocate for Pluto. Pluto gets a really bad rap as this like destructive energy, and it can be if mismanaged, but you can absolutely turn it around in a very like Jungian shadow integration kind of way. So this is really exciting to me. Like I said, this was on my wish list for years, and I found it and it was 50% off, so I got it for like $5, and I don't even think even, because I ended up getting into a conversation with the seller about specifically this book as well as the current Pluto-Saturn situation that we're experiencing and how that's going to translate when Jupiter changes station. And he knocked like a bunch off my books because I think he was just excited to talk to somebody about astrology. I am always happy to oblige. Speaking of outer planetary books, I also picked up this book, The Uranus-Neptune Influence. It's by Joy Mashhad. I'm guessing it's Mashhad. This book is from the 90s, and it specifically deals with the shift from the Piscean age into the Aquarian age. And those are super new agey words, and don't ever expect to hear me say them again. But there is always a very dominant planet in any given generation. So when you have, you know, a really dominant Neptune for so many years and then move into a really dominant Uranus, you're going to experience a lot of value shifts. Currently, we're in a very Saturnian age, as signified by all of this Capricorn everything going on. So even though this doesn't necessarily have quite the application as it did in the 90s, it's still really, really interesting to see how these planets, which are generational, influence us, our charts, and society as a whole. If you want to go down a rabbit hole, look up where some of these outer planets were during major events in society. Look at Pluto's influence on major world events. It is absolutely a rabbit hole, and you won't come up for air for hours, because I don't. Now we get a little less theoretical and a little more practical. I found this and I was super excited because Null Till is one of my favorite authors in astrology. If you follow me on Instagram, I've definitely talked about some Till books I have previously. When people ask me for recommendations on where to start with astrology, Null Till's definitely one of my go-to authors to recommend because he puts everything really practically. This is astrology, mundane, astral, and occult. If you read the very difficult to read back cover because it's black on burgundy, that was a choice. This is how the book describes itself. A remarkably clear explanation of the complicated methodology of mundane astrology based on in-depth analysis of the charts of leaders, countries, and events, and also treated our ingresses, eclipses, and great conjunctions and comets. One of the best short introductions to the fixed stars, a compelling treatment of esoteric astrology, occult patterns within the horoscope, degree symbolism, and the law of karma and cycle of reincarnation, deducing occult sensitivity from the chart. So it's kind of like a 3-in-1. I will admit, I'm not good with fixed stars. I know they exist, and I point them out when a chart really merits them being pointed out, but I don't work with them as much as I should. And I'm really excited to hear what he has to say about fixed stars, because that is an area of weakness for me, and I will fully admit that. Mundane astrology has to do with how astrology astrology relates to the world around us. Going back to like this book here, this is more mundane astrology. Occult astrology is a little bit beyond even what I do. I am an evolutionary astrologer, and I do talk a lot about the soul purpose and the journey of life and all that other stuff. I could, if I wanted to, push that towards like, oh, reincarnation and past lives, but that is much more, I guess, to the occult side of astrology, which I don't really get into with my clients very much, but it is interesting. And I'm excited to hear what Null Till has to say about it, because he's a very practical writer. This is part of a 12-part series. I do have volume 5 already. I believe volume 5 was actually like reprinted and repackaged as a standalone volume, and it's about astrological consultation and how to go about consulting a chart for a client. Even though it's geared towards professionals, it actually is an incredible resource for anyone looking to get into astrology, because he does an amazing job of telling you when something applies and when it doesn't. So I do end up recommending that to people who just want to learn a little bit more. Opal has decided this is the best time to crunch a bone. So the last book I picked up is very much related to my favorite all-time astrology text, Inside Degrees by Elias Lonsdale. If you've ever read my Instagram or gotten any of my newsletters or the Space Witch Revolution, you'll know that I definitely consult Elias Lonsdale's Inside Degrees often. For example, last week on Tuesday, I talked about the degrees of Pluto retrograde. That was based on Lonsdale. So this book I picked up because it is very similar and yet not remotely similar at all. This is just on exclusively the degrees of the Zodiac, and it goes degree by degree to show you the transitions between energies within the same sign. It's a little hard to tell like where this is from or who this is by, because the author's name is in microscopic font on the front. It's actually by Esther V. Leinbach, which I have never heard of before. It just says on the back, Degrees of the Zodiac, Esther V. Leinbach, McCoy Publishing Company. So I'm guessing this was an independent publication. There is no like Congress, page to this. It's 1972. So this is old, but it's definitely an interesting resource to kind of have in my arsenal. So this is definitely a book to help you interpret people's sun signs, what degree your sun is at. I feel like I keep finding fragments of bone that she keeps crunching and I keep removing just until the microphone is off. Oh my god, there's another one. So this is definitely more for people's sun signs. To have some fun, let's look at my sun sign. I am at 17 degrees of Sagittarius. Basically, this degree contributes an unpretentious faith in the goodness of God without narrow or judgmental attitude. I'm sorry, hold up. Backing that up. Without narrow or judgmatical attitude. It may be a rather naive sense of optimism, but it attaches itself to a belief in the stability of God's purpose and design for the universe. All of the artistic instincts are supported here, granting at the very least an appreciation or intuitive attunement. Wow, what's wrong with me today? He is also very sensitive to rebuff as well as to cold weather. At worst, he still turns to his religious faith. Should other factors in the chart indicate the needed strength, this degree would provide a childlike quality spoken of by Jesus as necessary for entrance into heaven. Such qualities coupled with strength would raise him to great heights. I'd say that's mostly accurate. I know I definitely try to maintain a sense of wonder and not revert to cynicism, which is really, really easy in a really Saturnian time that we just talked about. I do hate cold weather. I am very Esther got that on the nose. Just kind of an interesting thing to have around. It's kind of also like a fun party game, I think, to kind of like, ooh, like let's look up your sign. Not a book, but I was also really excited to find this crystal guy there. Not a treat, I'm sorry, baby girl. I picked up this gorgeous piece of copper. It's not a snack. I'm gonna cleanse it, consecrate it, and then it goes on my Venus altar because copper is sacred to Venus, and it's been a while since I made a really, really good offering. And it was was also like really inexpensive. Guys, everything that I've showed you in this video cost me way less than $20. Some of these books I was looking up on Amazon after the fact, they go for upwards of $20 because they're really niche books. Like, you really wouldn't want or need any of these things unless you are a practicing astrologer or just really curious about astrology, as like the seller obviously was. You might not need these in your collection. If you have read any of them, let me know in the comments. What did you think? Have you read any books like these? What kind of books do you use to keep yourself educated about this field of the world? If you are in a witchy, magical path, how do you stay up on education? Do you have other resources? You know, what blogs do you follow? What podcasts do you listen to? I'm genuinely curious because I need to know all the things. I don't know, that was fun, right? I had fun with that. I don't do haul videos, but maybe I will now every time I get like a good book haul, because God knows, I just keep collecting books. I'm gonna have to live in a house made out of books. All right. I will be back to let you know what's going on this month. Hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell so you know when I post all my daily videos, as well as videos like this on magic, on tarot, on astrology. Let me know what you would like to see. I will see you Monday. Bye, guys.